Spotlight is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. It seeks to spotlight people, places, and events from around the Diocese of Youngstown that promote the new gospel of joy called for by Pope Francis. Your program host is Father James Corda.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Spotlight. I'm Father Jim Corda. Today we're going to talk about generational poverty. And joining me in today's discussion is Sister Patricia McNicholas and Robin Finger. Welcome to our show today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You know, I think when we talk about generational poverty, a lot of people are extremely unfamiliar with that phrase. I have to admit that it was something that I really didn't know a lot about, and embarrassingly so. I think to set the stage for our discussion, which I think will be extremely interesting for the folks that are with us, I'd like to invite Robin to tell us a little bit about herself. We know that you had some beginnings with Beatitude House on your journey, yes, and some wonderful things to celebrate. Yeah. And so let's let the folks know about your experience there.
Well, my experience there seems as I was brought there because I prayed for help and for guidance. I was in a shelter in Cleveland, Ohio, and it was in 2009. And while I was in the shelter, I was looking for a place that offered me structure for my family, to help me reunite with my children, that would allow me to have access to higher education. And also I was really interested in getting a job. So I was trying to get my children back stable with me, and we were homeless in the shelter. And when I looked into the internet with one of the social workers at Harbor Lights in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was in the Zelma George shelter, that was the first thing that came up after she put those 3 acronyms into the search engine. And Beatitude House came up for disadvantaged women and their children. When I first came there for the interview, I didn't think that I would be accepted. I thought that, it would be a timely process, and my time was running out in Cleveland. I couldn't find anything in Cleveland that fit the criteria of what I needed. So I was soon accepted, and when I was accepted in, they said that they would help me focus my efforts towards what it is my goals were. So we set goals, and with their guidance, I was able to get into college the year after my coming to Beatitude House.
Well, that's a wonderful story, and I know that you've graduated recently from YSU.
Yes.
And how did that experience feel for you, going through that and graduating with high honors?
Well, I was surprised, to be able to break that cycle of none of us having a college education in our family. If we did, we had some college education, but I went the furthest to get a bachelor's.
Well, that's wonderful. I think before we get into actually defining generational poverty, let's talk about this year of encounter with Pope Francis. And Sister Pat, tell us what that is all about.
Well, the year has just reinforced for me the life I've lived for the last 15 years, especially. In some ways, I pray daily, and all of a sudden the word mercy jumps out. It's in our prayers daily, regularly, and it calls me to think even more deeply about what it means. I live at Beatitude House at our site on the north side, and so I'm with usually about 25 children and 12 moms, and I have my apartment and they each have their apartments, but I get a lot of encounter with them, so it's always that reminder of what their journey is and what blessing I might be able to bring to them. And just last week, for example, I had a 10-year-old boy, and because somebody had given me some children's literature, I had distributed it, but there was nothing for a 10-year-old boy. So I said, well, we'll order something on Amazon. And he came in, and I said, now, if you're willing to buy Gently Used, we might be able to afford 2 books. And his eyes were like saucers, because we could order a book for a penny, Gently Used. I survived 9/11, and I survived the Titanic. At 8:15 the next morning, my doorbell's ringing. Has it arrived yet? But that is just a living experience of what trying to live out mercy in a concrete way means. It means that the poor are poor for many reasons and struggling for many reasons. And in my world of the poor, the call for mercy says, how do we provide care and compassion and challenge and encouragement rather than criticism and judgment and
all those bad things that we tend to do as human beings, mainly out of ignorance, or out of whatever prejudice we have. We've just got a few minutes left of our first segment. Briefly explain what generational poverty is, because I think for the folks that are with us, they may not even have heard that term.
By generational poverty, we mean that people have been in poverty for at least 2 generations. And as we look back over the 25 years of Beatitude House, we're finding that it's much easier for somebody who fell into poverty or whose parents even fell into poverty to have a dream and an imagination and a sense of how to get beyond it. But if it's several generations, that lack of imagination is often not there, and there begins to be a whole mixture of values and choices that are more common that we'll examine more as we continue the conversation. So the point is, what's the impact of poverty when people have been in it for generations?
Okay. And we're going to take a break in just a moment, but when we come back, we're going to talk about what you term a dual economic system that really is causing a lot of this generational poverty, and we'll talk a little bit about how we can get through that. And I think understanding that, first of all, is probably important, and then how we can break that system and that cycle is as important. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Johnsons enjoy Friday dinners out. Nothing fancy, just time together to reconnect as family. They make sure others eat as well. By giving to Catholic Charities of Youngstown, the Johnsons join other angels who care for those in need, regardless of religion or race. Show your wings with a gift to Catholic Charities, changing lives one family at a time, providing housing, emergency financial assistance, senior services, and more. Give now at ccdoy.org.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm talking with Sister Patricia McNicholas and Robin Finger, and we're addressing generational poverty. Sister, give us just a brief idea of this dual economic system that really kind of drives this generational poverty, and then I'll have Robin kind of give some of her experience about that.
When I say 2 economic systems, I think people have, in general in the country, have no idea of how economically segregated we are. So if you've been poor a long time, inevitably you know and have had to learn how to negotiate the system to get help with heating assistance in the winter, or electric assistance, or food stamps, or medical help at a clinic, and you may know how to sell your blood, and you may know how to function in this system. And if you have a chance to move up to a system where now there's going to be things taken out of your pay that you've never seen before, and you don't know about retirement, and you don't know about mortgages, and you don't know about car payments, and you don't know. There's a whole nother system that it's very hard either way. So I've known people who fell into poverty. They cannot make hide nor hair of the system, and vice versa. People start to break out, and now they're blocked. They can't get credit. They can't get a credit card. They can't get a, and they don't understand the system.
Yeah.
Robin?
An example of that would be, I have a very minimal understanding of APR. It's something called oppers that has been taking money from my paycheck. I don't even know what they are. There's some type of retirement system. So I've never had a 401k. I've never made more than $10 an hour until I've just recently been employed with the Ursuline Center. So I didn't know what it was to save money, because I thought with extra monies I would be able to get things that my children would like to have, like decent clothing or decent shoes, or even getting their hair did or something like that. So I still don't know how the interest rates work on credit cards and different things like that. So
tell them about the course you're going to prepare for home ownership, you hope, down the road.
Okay, I just graduated from the home ownership program that is offered through YMHA, and what they do is help us understand mortgage. They help us with financial fitness and literacy. They help us with showing us the percentage of income that should go towards rent, or rather mortgage, and it shouldn't be no more than 1/3 of your income. So I'm just finding these things out, how to shop around for a decent mortgage, and the interest and the fees. I'm finding out about closing costs and things of such, and wondering how I'm to get through this, and what I need to come up with as down payments and things of such.
Yeah, all of those things many people take for granted, or it's just been part of their life, and so
or
it's
you
just
go to your parents and they teach you.
Exactly.
Teach you.
So coming into a situation where you need to learn those things at a grassroots level is really important, but also it's scary at times, I would imagine.
I'm scared all the time.
Well, we hope you move beyond that, because you're well on your way to you've broken out of that cycle, and so there's that blessing that you can be to your family, to your children, so they don't experience the same thing. And I would think that's really the impact of generational poverty on people, to kind of break out of this system.
And the realization of how hard it is to do it. It's much easier said than done because of all these obstacles. I have never had a person in the 15 years I've lived at Beatitude House who had credit card debt, because I don't know anybody who has a credit card. So it's just totally. So then suddenly having one, and it says you only have to pay this little bit. People believe that.
Bad news.
Bad news,
for
right?
Sure. Yeah, and it's almost like a learning process when you think about it. It's like learning, for lack of a better analogy, learning your ABCs or how to write, which those things are really fundamental, but those things are not always part of who we are as we grow up. And what I think it's unfortunate is that we tend to have created this dual system in our world, and especially in our communities, that we have those that are poor and those that are rich, or those that are middle class. The sad thing is that we have those divisions.
And the presumption is that the cause of the poverty is the poor people not trying. And we don't acknowledge the underlying, of course there's occasionally personal responsibility as part of it, but we don't acknowledge the other causes of poverty, the basic segregation, the failing schools, the fewer opportunities for somebody. I just read a survey where they sent out 500 applications, exactly the same, and except one was from somebody with a name like Jamal, and one was from somebody with a name like Brendan, and tracked how many got called back with the resumes exactly the same. And we say, oh, everybody has the same chance. They don't.
Yeah, and that's really a sad thing in our society. You know, like anything, there's so many myths that are there, so many different things that tend to drive human beings, and I think especially in our political world, that's even more so. But how important it is for us, at least through education, to educate ourselves, educate our communities, to understand that we need to dispel and to eradicate those myths, because it's not always someone's fault that they're in this situation. There are circumstances that have led to this oftentimes.
Right, and we forget that we want to blame the individual, but I'm living with 25 children, 8 of whom are under 1. If their family if we're not able to turn that family around, think of the impact on that child over the years. And then we're going to blame that child who doesn't know all kinds of things because the opportunity was never there.
We're going to take a quick break and talk a little bit more about that. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about Robin's wonderful education experience and also what work you're doing right now. But we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Their numbers are growing more and more. More than a year ago. More than a decade ago. More people now living in this state than nearly any state in the Union. 1 out of every 8 people in America. 1 out of every 10 families in America. 1 out of every 6 children in America. 33 million Americans struggling just to remain standing. 33 million Americans teetering on the brink of hunger, sickness, hardship, uncertainty. 33 million Americans in these United States descending into poverty. And as their futures fall, so does our nation's.
Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy.
Welcome back to our show. We're talking about generational poverty, and with me is Robin and Sister Pat. I'd like to ask Robin to give us a little bit of your experience going to college and the university, what that was like, and then tell us the journey you took to where you are now and the work that you're doing.
Okay, well, when I first went to college, I was worried about, like fitting into the campus, and that atmosphere was something that would be new to me. I felt like, I'm going back to school to face another challenge, and I was wondering, was I up to that, and how would I fit in? I'm a little too old to be a college student, but from what Sister Patricia says, it's never too late. So I think what gave me my confidence was my affiliation with Beatitude House. So it wasn't as humiliating as I thought that it would be. And then it was there were other non-trad students that were there. So it made it seem more like I had peers. It was difficult at first. Not the education part. It's just like everything else that was going on through my mind. And Sister Mary Alice would always say, well, don't worry about that. You don't have to worry about that right now. So because of me being a participant at Beatitude House, I didn't have to worry about what my child was going to eat the next day. Will I be able to have enough time to donate to studying? What is it that I had to cook? How would I pay the bills? Will the lights be on? All of those things matter when you're in pursuit of higher education, because these are things that I was used to dealing with in my everyday life. So with those distractions being resolved, it made it a lot easier to go on this journey. I just graduated with my bachelor's in social work May of last year, and what I went into college, I was undecided as to what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be. I never did think of my future in those terms, that I would have a choice in what I would be. So with all the compassion that was given to me, I made the decision to give back. And that's why I went into social work, because of the help that I received through Beatitude House. It made me want to be who they are and who they are to me today in my life. And right now I work with the Ursuline Center, and I'm in the help and profession of social work. I'm able to do outreach through the Sister Jerome's Mission Program, and I'm also able to work with clients and do case management and help the homeless, chronically homeless, get jobs in our Ursuline Sisters HIV and AIDS ministries.
Well, there's something wonderful about giving back. You know, when someone's given to you, and to be able to give back, and how important that is for any of us. You know, because if we look at our lives, we've been blessed in so many ways, and some more than others, and those more than others should be giving back more. And so there's that sense that we all have a blessing, we all have a gift, and to give that back is just really thanking the Lord for the blessings He's given us. We want to talk now about the impact of generational poverty on education and literacy, because that's really important.
Right, and in many ways, Robin's the exception to the theory, and mostly because she's inherently very bright and gifted, which is obvious. In general, they say, does every parent want their children to do well? Yes, of course. But translating that into behaviors for people who have been in generational poverty, they've never seen it. So it becomes practical problems. Do your kids go to bed on time so they can get enough sleep? That's just not a value sometimes. It's just missing. They don't know how important that is to education. They don't understand how to read the reports that come from the school often, and so if there's struggles, they don't understand them. They don't read to their children enough. They aren't starting at age 1 reading stories to their children. They don't understand that's important. If the child has a doctor's appointment, it's way too common to miss the whole day of school, because the problem of transportation interferes. I can't imagine how I'm going to get to the school, get a bus, get it becomes overwhelming, so they don't go to school. So there's all kinds of obstacles. So the theory, I want a good education, doesn't always translate into practice. And so it's been proven with some great research, what they call the 30 million word gap. It said by age 2, children of poverty, middle class, or wealthy almost all have the same language development. By age 5, there is a gap of children in poverty have heard 10 million words, not 10 million different words, but they've heard language that much. Children in the middle class have heard 20 million, and children in the upper class have heard 30 million. And that speaking in language and using adjectives and colors and names, so you don't have children coming to school in kindergarten who don't know their colors or don't know. I've had children come to my door. I had a child once knock on the door, 4, could I have a piece of candy? Said, no, but I have some grapes. 5 minutes later, the door rings. Can I have a piece of candy? I said, what'd you do with the grape? He said, I tasted it and I fed it to the squirrel. But he did not know what a grape was.
Yeah. The disparity is troubling sometimes when you think about it. And in this land of opportunity, land of the free, we should not have those things. You know, it's important for us to dispel that and to build bridges so as to make sure that we don't leave anyone in poverty. We're down to the last minute or so of our time together. The one kind of word that I'd like us to close with is that word compassion. We began with the word mercy with Pope Francis. And how does compassion, Robin, in your experience, play into all that we've talked about?
Compassion. Wow. I've been shown compassion through coming through Beatitude House. I mean, it was just so overwhelming to me when Sister Betty came and she said, well, we're gonna have McNicholas go to Ursuline. And I'm like, to Ursuline? I said, I can't afford for him to go to Ursuline. And she said, well, don't worry about that. We're going to take care of that. I'm like, you're going to do that for me? I mean, I just found it to be surprising that someone is going to help me go to school and help me with my bills so that I can get better for myself. It just didn't add up because I've never been given that type of compassion. I've never had a support system. I didn't even know of the importance of a support system. So when I found out how important it was to have one and that it was a quality resource, that's when I started developing a support system for my children and trying to be there for them in the ways that I need to be there. When we first came to Beatitude House, my daughters were 10 years old. They aspired to work at McDonald's and work at Save-A-Lot. This was their big dream. What do you want to be when you grow up? Today, when you speak to my 16-year-old daughter, she wished to attend Spelman, and she would like to be a lawyer.
Wonderful.
She's asked Sister Patricia, could she shadow or do her internship? Right now, she's going to MCCTC through Boardman for cosmetology. And now she aspires to do something greater than we did coming in.
That's wonderful. And that's the teaching moment. That is sharing what you learned and passing that on, and how important it is for us to pass that on to future generations so they don't get stuck in this cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think at a core of that compassion is our belief as Christians in the inherent dignity of every person. And that's it. We just believe it.
Sister Patricia McNicholas, Robin Finger, our time went by so fast. It was wonderful to talk with both of you and for you to share something so important as this that we talked about today. And God bless you in your future. We know it's very bright.
Thank
Thanks
you for
all
the
that you do.
invitation.
And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you.
Spotlight has been a production of CTNY, the Catholic Television Network of Youngstown. Your program host was Father James Corda.